While India is no stranger to the heat before the monsoon season begins, this year's temperatures have soared well above 40 degrees Celsius. So are the recent extreme heat waves the new normal for India and neighboring Pakistan? Dr. Soumya Swaminathan is the chairperson of the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation and a former chief scientist at the WHO. She joins me now from Chennai. Dr. Swaminathan, really appreciate your time and glad to have you with us today. Now, we visit this story every year around this time of heat waves across India. How would you describe the current one and in comparing to those previous from recent seasons?
Well, thank you very much. And yes, India, many districts, many states is in the grip of another heat wave that's actually started quite early. It started in April this year, and there was a week or two of very high heat, and then there was some cooling in some places. But clearly the trend over the last several years has been that every year we've come to higher temperatures, we've reached higher temperatures, the heat has been more prolonged and over larger parts of the country. And the urban areas, the cities in particular, are actually facing the brunt even more. And that's probably because of the way we've built our cities and the urban heat island effect, which doesn't even allow the nights to cool down. The nights are also very warm now. There's also been a trend towards increasing humidity, especially over the northern and central Indian plains that used to be very, very dry before. And therefore, the adaptability of the human body to humid heat is also something that is new and that's taking place. So we're also expecting an El Nino this year, which is adding to the uncertainty around the monsoon and the fear of subadequate monsoon and perhaps drought in some parts of the country. But as of now, it's really every day, just dealing with the heat and making sure that people survive and don't fall ill and in the extreme cases, don't die of extreme.
Yes, and if the extremes are getting more intense and frequent, is this being considered as a sort of a national emergency at all?
Yes. So the National Disaster Management Agency does consider extreme heat as one of the disasters, and many states have actually recognized it as a disaster, which means compensation can be paid to people who actually die of a heat stroke. So people are taking it very seriously. There are heat action plans that cities and districts and states have developed and are implementing. So I think, yes, everyone is very much aware of the problem and the need for solutions.
Yes, Dr. Swaminathan, do we get a clear picture of how many people do lose their lives, unfortunately, from extreme heat-related illnesses? As you mentioned, they may be, their families may be eligible for compensation.
There is a problem there because it's not very straightforward, to make the diagnosis of heat stroke-related death, particularly if the person has died outside a health facility or a hospital, as is often the case in India, particularly in rural India. And very often the final event before death is actually a heart attack. And therefore the deaths could often be recorded as a heart attack or even an acute kidney shutdown, which is the other thing that happens with dehydration. And the cause that heat actually caused that to happen may not be recognized. So that's one reason why heat-related deaths are actually, I believe, underreported in India. The other is that many deaths happen at home in rural India and they're not certified by a medical doctor.
Yes, in that vein, how would you then describe the overall sort of human cost of what can be only described as such a devastating heat wave where temperatures in some parts have been known to even exceed 50 degrees Celsius?
Well, there are studies, there was a study done in 10 cities of India that showed that excess mortality was clearly linked to high heat days when the temperature went above 45. And there's a recent modeling study which showed that, there are probably thousands of excess deaths due to heat occurring in India. But apart from the deaths, I would say that's the tip of the iceberg. It reflects a much larger base of ill health, of people not being able to perform, of people not being able to work, of people, going into kidney failure, of people actually, their diseases like diabetes and heart disease getting aggravated. We know mental health illnesses also get aggravated. And all of this, in addition to their health, and impacts on families is also affecting productivity, because we know that people take days off work, or they're not able to actually do the work that they would otherwise do if they had a comfortable thermal environment. We also know that women face a disproportionate burden of heat, that domestic violence, for example, goes up during the hottest days of the summer, and they also suffer a lot of physical, reproductive health and mental health disorders. It's a survey that we did last year. So I think the impact on its impact on the social fabric, on communities, on productivity, and on the economy, apart from the direct impact on health.
Yes. And, you mentioned the cities bear the brunt, because of the sheer population densities. And one would presume that lower income groups will be especially vulnerable because they don't have access to amenities like the air conditioner. How do people in that situation cope day to day when those temperatures exceed 45 degrees? And what are the limits, to that as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think people do whatever they can, given the situation that they're in. So you're absolutely right that a very small minority of people actually have access to air conditioning. In India, it's less than 6-7%. And so the vast majority of people have to manage without air conditioning. There are other forms of cooling. Of course, fans are widely available. Passive cooling, in the more traditional homes, in the rural areas, they're actually much more heat resilient. But our urban infrastructure, unfortunately, has been built with too much concrete and asphalt and cement and glass, which is just not, the right thing for this kind of weather. So, in fact, many women have told us that during the hottest days of the time of the day, it's better for them to be outside than inside, because very often they have a metal roof, which actually makes the indoor temperature even higher than outdoors. So they sit under a tree, they drink water, they wet themselves, they take, some traditional herbal remedies. There are certain fruits and vegetables that are more cooling, that are much more hydrating. So they do all of that to try and stay cool. And when it gets really bad, they give up a day's labor. They give up a day's wages, essentially, because they just can't go to work.
Yes, and of course, given what you've just been telling us, one would assume that perhaps there must be a sort of a national approach work towards, building the sort of cities that can, absorb the impacts of very extreme temperatures to address that. Is there a national approach there?
So I think there's no national approach, I would say, that I'm aware of. And in fact, that's very much needed, because I think our building codes need to change. The way we are constructing cities need to change. How much open space should be allowed? How much green and blue cover should we have? What materials should we use? And especially for the low income areas of the country, which are the ones that often face the highest heat because of the dense and overcrowded nature. How can we actually provide more shading? And there's a lot of passive ventilation that can be done in the absence of air conditioning. Clearly, everyone in India or many other developing countries cannot get access to air conditioning. But even without air conditioning, one can do a lot of design features in houses which allow good ventilation, which do green roofs. You can do, paint the roofs with reflective paint and so on. But we've got to look for more affordable solutions. And health systems also need to be equipped to deal more and more with the health consequences of heat. So I think it's all a work in progress as we speak, but there's clearly realization that this needs to happen. And I think we need to start learning from each other and really look at exemplar cities, which have done it well. I think Singapore is a good example, where both greenery and natural ventilation, just the way that even though they're big apartment blocks, but you can actually sit inside without air conditioning because of the cross ventilation that you get.
Okay, Dr. Swaminathan, really appreciate your insights there from Chennai. Thank you very much.
Thank you.